Alrighty then. It's time to start the net. I'm Montana Jim. I will be taking over as net control for Red Bear. He had to work today. So I'll also be giving the topic of the week, which will be, it's all about food, our part 3 thing, multiple uses for some food stores, to help you get thinking about what things you should decide to stock up on that will give you the most variety. So at this time, I will take any check-ins that we have. Please come with your name and state, and after you've done that, please wait for acknowledgement for the next one to check in. Those who wish to check in, please come now. Okay, anybody wishing to check in to the PrepNet for tonight's topic, please come now. If you don't check in, not a problem. We're just here to try to pass along some information. But if you would check in with your name and state and tell us that you'll just be monitoring, we will not bother you at all. We already have 2, so at least I'm not going to be talking to myself tonight. Anybody like to check in to the net tonight, please come now. Okie dokie. Well, we got 2. We only had 2 last time, and we actually had a very good net. So, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and just start the presentation. Let me break real quick. Any comments on last week's net will be posted on our YouTube channel and not presented here. This week's topic will show some of the multiple uses for your food stores. Having items that you can be used for many different types of meals gives you more variety and reduces the amount of space you need to store them, or you will be able to store more food in the same amount of space. What we will present here will not be a complete list, but it should give you an idea to think about what you should stock up on. So let's get started. Break. A can of pinto beans or freeze-dried pinto beans can be used to make chili, put in soups and stews, and made into refried beans. It's more effective to have the beans than individual cans of chili, soup, stews, or refried beans. I already covered the example of using preserved ground beef in last week's net. Warning, you can freeze-dry raw meat, however, I do not recommend it. If you pre-cook the meat, you will have removed any bad things, and the freeze-drying process will remove the liquid, which is where the bad stuff grows. Again, think about the food items you want to stock up on. All right. Freeze-dried diced tomatoes can be brought back as diced tomatoes or salsa. Now, if you crush those same freeze-dried tomatoes into a powder, you can make tomato soup to tomato paste. Just season it. Freeze-dried shredded cheese can come back as shredded cheese to be used on hamburgers, tacos, and sandwiches, or for grilled cheese sandwiches. Crushing the freeze-dried cheese, you can make a cheese powder and then use that in a variety of ways. Rehydrating your freeze-dried potatoes into potato dishes you like. Yep, you guessed it. Crush the freeze-dried potatoes into a powder, and now you have potato flakes. Add water or milk and whatever, and make mashed potatoes. Great. And let's finish up the freeze-dried food with raw freeze-dried eggs. The egg powder makes passable scrambled eggs or even a fried egg sandwich. I also use my freeze-dried egg powder in my cooking and baking. The rest of the presentation will be directed at the dry foods, and let's start with sugar. Obviously, sugar is used to sweeten things and is used in baking. If you use brown sugar, you don't need to buy it separately. You can make your own brown sugar from white sugar and molasses as needed. Break. Dry pasta is next. Now, pasta isn't flexible as you can't make elbow pasta out of angel hair pasta. However, most 1-pound packages of pasta will take up about the same amount of space. So just make sure that you have a variety of the types you like. And remember, any type of pasta can be used for many different dishes, hot and cold. Now, how about popcorn? You can use popcorn for a few things other than popped popcorn. Though fresh popcorn topped with your home canned butter sounds pretty good. Right? Now, if you coarse grind popcorn in a mill, you get cornmeal. Now, I have used this, quote, cornmeal to make everything from cookies to pancakes. You can also finely grind the popcorn into a type of corn flour. It's not exactly masa, but it might do in a pinch. I have used this in a recipe for north of the border tortillas, which uses a combination of white flour and corn flour. They had a very corn tortilla flavor. Great. Now, dry beans are just going to make dry beans, or they're going to make beans, and they can take a long time to cook, anybody that's ever done it. However, you can pressure can them. They will be instantly available and more tender than the store-bought cans of beans you buy. They also make great refried beans. And I'll cover more about how to do that in our All About Preservation series. Just to let you know, the canning process takes about 90 minutes for quarts. And tell me how long you cook your dry beans to get nice and tender beans. I'll bet you it's a lot longer than 90 minutes. Right? Now to green coffee beans. Yes, I know this is a one-trick pony item, and I don't care. I need my coffee, and store-bought ground coffee or roasted beans will lose their oils and will go stale. A link to green coffee beans is available in the video description of the expanded presentation, which can be found on our YouTube channel. Now, I roast my green beans as needed for very fresh coffee and tailored to my taste. The green beans, if stored properly, will last a long time and are much cheaper than the roasted beans you buy in the store. You can use your rice to make rice flour by fine grinding dry rice into flour. Right? And finally to wheat or wheat berries. Wheat is very similar to rice in that it is a small, very hard grain kernel. The most common use is to fine grind wheat into wheat flour to make bread and to bake with. Note here, many experts say you must use your milled flour within anywhere from 1 week to 1 month after milling, or it goes stale or rancid. This is major BS. I have milled various varieties of wheat and used them many, many months later. The flour was not stale nor rancid, and the bread I made rose just fine and tasted great. So much for experts. Correct? I also use my wheat to make my own cream of wheat cereal by coarse grinding the wheat. Or you might be able to make grits with it. I'm not sure. My homemade cream of wheat cooks up exactly as the store-bought one does and tastes better and has more nutrition. I've had this stored more than 5 months and it was still fresh. And this is the end of our All About Food series. Break. As stated in last week's net, if you have any questions about what we have discussed here tonight, please ask during the roundtable, or send your questions to prepnetch14@gmail.com and enter question in the subject line. And again, I cannot urge you enough to view the expanded presentation on our YouTube channel for additional information on the topic. Quick break. I hope this sort of gives you an idea or food for thought that you can store things that can do multiple things. I think this is really a good idea because as we covered last time, if you just do stew, that's all you have. If you have the meat separate, the vegetables separate, you can make all sorts of different things. So with that, I think we'll start the All About Electricity topic next time, and this will be a multi-part series as it will cover a lot of stuff. Quick break. Okay, guys, that is the end of my rambling on. At this point, I'm going to take a quick break and see if we have any other check-ins. Please come with your name and the state you're from and wait for me to acknowledge to the person. Any check-ins, please. Okay, we're going to turn around and ask those people who are listening. If you don't want to participate and make comments, please check in with your name, state, and say you want to monitor, and we'll leave it at that. Please come now. Okie dokie, looks like it's just Donna and Keith, and not a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it over to Donna there, and what'd you think? Any questions? Any comments?
Well, on to, talking about dry beans, I can state from personal experience multiple times that after soaking them for more than a day and cooking them for several hours, they still very rarely are tender enough to really be tasty. So the home canned beans are the best way to go.
Yeah, I absolutely would agree with that. I even think that the home canned beans are better than the store-bought beans. I just made a bean-type dish using store-bought beans, and I could tell instantly. It was still great, don't get me wrong, but I could still tell that if I would have used my home canned beans, it would have been even better. So, yes, but then again, so like I said, the bean thing is somewhat of a one-trick pony in that you can't do much with the dry bean until you cook it. But you can store it in its dry form for your longevity and then can a batch or two so you can have your instant access because the dry will last probably longer than your canned, although, as I've stated before, I am using stuff with canned in 2012, and it is still perfectly fine. Let's break. Did you have anything else, that you wanted to say about the whole presentation there, Donna?
I don't have anything to add or any comments to make at this point.
Copy that. We'll go ahead and take another little quick break there and see if anybody else has joined in a little bit late and wishes to check in. Please come now. Okie dokie. And that just shows that Red Bear does a much better job of being net controlled than I do. Okay, let's go ahead and turn it over to Keith. Any comments, observations, questions on the topic?
Oh, how y'all doing tonight? Well, this afternoon. I think it's a great idea what you're talking about. Being able to use something, different ways. That way it doesn't get boring. But the one thing that I think about every time I come to one of these nets is that I pray to God that we never, ever, ever have to use this. And something else that comes to mind every time I listen to this stuff is that, I'm nowhere near ready as I thought I would be. There's a lot of things you talk about that I really never thought of. And that's a lot of work. It's a whole lot of work. And as for beans, man, beans, the only time I cook beans just straight up, in a pot on the stove is whenever I buy a fresh bag at the store. If it's anything that's on my preps, I usually put that in the pressure cooker and cook it for about 2 hours. And they still seem that they could be a little better. But that's just the way I do it. Yeah. I've been stocking up on MREs ever since Falcon had brought it up in one of our nets. I know that's not enough, but I do have other things that I store. But after listening to this, I got a lot more work to do. And anyway, thanks for doing the net, man.
Oh, no problem, Pete. That's the whole point of this. Is there is so much involved in this prepping, and I do agree with you. I hope we never have to do it, that we have to implement it. Although I have found, as I've said in a net there, I did have to implement one of my plans when I had a frozen water line. And the plan was, okay, you lose water. What do you do? And the good thing, it worked quite well. And it just proved that, okay, the planning was right. I did make one change in it. But, and again, just a quick break. There's no downside to prepping, because at the very least, you are purchasing or storing food and supplies that you buy at today's prices, that if you end up having to use them 2 or 3 or 4 years later for maybe something that's even not an emergency, like say you lose your job, or like in my case, my water went out. Okay, well, I got to use water supply, etc. The supply that I had. So whatever you're going to be using those supplies for, you're going to be using those supplies cheaper than what you would if you had to buy them right now. So that's the least part of it, which is still a really big positive. Plus, and I'll break. Plus, even if you're just using your quote preps to do normal things, say like where I'm at, I can get snowed in. So I don't have to worry about making sure, oh, gee, do I have enough food? I know I have enough food. I know I have enough, quote, medical supplies. I know I have enough paper supplies, etc. And it relieves a lot of stress off of you, that you don't have to worry about that. And I'm not against MREs. I mean, heaven knows, I have a lot of MREs down in my basement, but they have their uses, just like the dry foods have their uses, and the freeze-dried has their uses. So that's why you have to sort of look at your situation and decide what your what you need for you. So I'll go ahead and break and see if we have any late check-ins. Any late check-ins, please come with your name and state. Okay, hearing none. Why don't we go ahead and just open it up between us? Any questions on sort of anything that we've covered? I think we've done about 10 or 12 of these over various little things, and any questions or comments on any of them. And yes, Keith, there's a whole bunch. And like the electricity one, I'm figuring there's probably going to be 5 or 6 different sessions because of what has to be covered. And the other thing I'm really coming to the conclusion, because I'm not bugging out, I'm bugging in, is that those who are going to bug out are going to have a much harder time than those of us who are bugging in, because I have much more space to keep my stuff, and I don't have to worry about trying to, I would need to have a semi here to take my stuff with me. So anyway, let's just go ahead and open it up, and either Donna or Keith jump in.
Well, I'm gonna bug in if ever have to, because I don't have the I don't have the place to go to, so this is just gonna have to work for me, and I'm looking forward to the electricity one, but I need to start. Well, kind of late now. I just picked my chickens up in their coop. I decided to leave them in there and not to let them roam around in the backyard, because I didn't have a garden this year because of the chickens. They was always in the bed, kicking up dirt and dusting themselves. So I just left it for the chickens. But decided I'm gonna lock them up and grow a garden, next summer, next spring, whatever. But I do have things for water and stuff like that. And fortunately, so far, I ain't never had to use my stuff for a hurricane this year, so that's great. I'm not, counting out the hurricanes, because they're still not over with yet. But anyhow, all right, back to you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Now, and the thing about bugging out, which the reason I've sort of talk a little bit about, or actually a lot about bugging out here, is in some of our first nets, I got the impression from all the feedback, which I do listen to, that a lot of people were not in a position, say like myself or say yourself, that could bug in. And so I'm trying to, come up with as much information as possible. But if you really think about it, and especially if you keep going into some of these other things, there is a lot of stuff you would have to take, unless you want to do Grizzly Adams style. There is a lot of stuff that you are going to have to take with you if you are going to bug out. And that's why if you're going to bug out, you should actually have a location that you're going to go to that you can actually store your stuff at. Let me break here, because my mouth can go forever and ever. Yeah, I know what you're talking about the about the garden and stuff. And you just got to do what you can. And if, say, you didn't grow your garden, think about, what can I find on sale? And I can either buy that, or, there's nothing that says you cannot re-can something. So maybe you buy a big number 10 can of, I'll just say, spaghetti sauce. There is nothing that says you cannot re-can that into smaller jars that are more usable for your situation, and make it last longer than leaving it in the number 10 can. Or you leave it in the number 10 can, and when you open the number 10 can to use the first part of it, you take the rest of it and you go ahead and preserve it in another way. So we are going to have a series on about preservation and all the different ways you can, preserve foods, etc. So hopefully that will be of some interest. I'm going to throw it back to Donna there and see whether she has any comments about what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the beans. I can't seem to let this subject go. you can plant them as well as preserve them. And I had a limited success a couple of years ago. But it was kind of too late in the season, so they didn't survive the cold, but they did sprout.
Right. And again, you have to take a look at the, this is an example, say it's pinto beans, and I think that's what you were talking about. Yes, you can grow them, and I do not discourage you from not doing that. However, the growing is not the hard part. The hard part is your harvest, because what you need to do is they are just like a green bean, where you actually have to take the bean that's inside out. That takes time. Same thing with I successfully grew wheat, but the growing part wasn't the problem. It was the actual harvesting and going through all the process of separating the wheat from the chaff, and then getting rid of the chaff that was left and all that. It's actually better for me to go out and buy 25-pound bags or 50-pound bags of wheat than it would be for me to grow my own, because my time is worth something. Not worth very much, but it is worth something. So let me break. Because like I said, I am one of them alligator stations. All mouth and no ears. But you have to look at that. And, okay, in your case, Keith, because of the chickens, you didn't grow anything. Again, find things that are on sale. I do that all the time. And I'm a case lot salesperson. If something's really good on a case lot, I don't go buy a can or two. I buy a case or two, etc. But things you either didn't grow this year or you can't grow, you need to think about, I need to start stocking up on things I cannot create on my own. We all have to get into the thing of, if things turn bad, I will not be able to go to Walmart and be able to buy this, that, or the other thing. And so those things that you cannot reproduce on your own, you need to stock up on, because they're not going to be there. And that's like when we get to electricity on generators. They're great, but where are you going to get the fuel? So let me just see if there's anybody else that wants to late check in. Not a problem. Please come with your name and state, please.
This is Terry from Florida.
Okay, hope I copied that down right. Terry from Florida. I don't know how much you heard, but if you have a comment, man, please go.
No, I've just been listening for a while, last few year nets. I kind of have an emergency management background, so I kind of look at it probably from a different perspective as probably most preppers. I kind of go with the FEMA guidelines of prepping for 72 hours to 1 week, and that's how long it takes for help to get there. I don't have no intention to be the last man standing after some sort of disaster, but I'm more interested in how to prep a community, right? How to get either your subdivision, your neighborhood, or your small village prepared as a group. Because if you all don't make it, it's kind of a sad situation. And so I kind of look at it more from a group perspective.
Yeah, copy that, Gary. Yeah. I got a couple of comments on that. As you've probably heard, I'm not light on doing that. First, on the FEMA standards, the reason I don't go with FEMA standards is I originally came from California, right along the San Andreas Fault. And that's been the thing. 3 days, the government's going to get there. Okay? Well, we've seen in news things over the past years that sometimes the government doesn't get there in 3 days. So you really have to prep for more than that. But again, that was my situation. Again, with the prepping and things, you have to identify what your, quote, dangers are. In California, it was, the earthquakes. Where you're at in Florida, it could be hurricanes, it could be flooding, it could be other things. So first you need to identify those. Let me break real quick here. And so when I come up with stuff, I'm coming up with it from my point of view, and everybody is different, and I just try to drum that in. You really have to look at yourself. What do you need, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when you're coming about the community, that's a little harder. One of our first nets that we did here, we sort of talked about, how do you get other people involved in prepping? Because I'm sure you've sort of heard that, prepping or, prepper used to be a really bad word. You were considered to be a nut. And so the only thing I would have to say about that is I would be cautious. I would sort of feel people out. But you can just casually bring up, preparedness, and especially with you having a preparedness background, right? You could probably more easily come up, bring that up in conversation with your neighbors that wouldn't turn around if they don't already know that you do prepare. Because there are people out there, I have one neighbor, his idea of prepping is if things turn bad, I'm going to forcibly take from people who have prepared. And unfortunately, there are probably more than you would like to assume who would actually do that. Any comments there, Terry, or Carrie? Sorry about that.
Well, I agree. I mean, the 72-hour thing is just a start. I usually try to go 1 to 2 weeks worth of supplies on hand if I can. Again, just to allow for a buffer. But I've been part of those teams that go into a disaster area and help people afterwards. And I can tell you, I mean, you look at Katrina, you look at Helene, it takes, 3, 4, 5 days to spin up people. They're coming from states all over the U.S. and they're coming to help, bringing supplies. So yeah, you need to be prepared to last a little bit longer than the minimum. As far as getting others involved, yeah, you don't really want to use a prepper language. You want to use emergency preparedness, right? And you could go to your HOA board, right? You could set up, community groups, where people get together and say, hey, we are in a hurricane-prone area or earthquake-prone area. What if we had some basic communications? We all agreed on FRS Channel 3, or we agreed on Meshtastic, or we agreed on something, that we could all kind of, at least have a way to communicate and a way to, share ideas.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's a good gateway. I'm a ham operator, and of course, part of the reason that a lot of hams get into it is to be able to provide emergency communications. I mean, we had the Loma Prieta earthquake in '89, and I was involved in providing emergency communications for that. So, but that's a good gateway. That or a Meshtastic, GMRS type thing can get people sort of. You got the bait on the hook and you throw it to them, and then you can just, bring other things up. But there is so much. So what I'm going to do, we do have a YouTube page, and on that channel, like I don't know if you heard the presentation I gave or not, but I post an expanded presentation that will usually have additional information that is more appropriate for a visual format than, say, the radio is. Let me break. And then we also, right now, we are taping the actual net, and that will be posted up there. So you can go to there and take a look at what we've talked about and discussed, and what people's reactions and what their comments are on it. So if you go to YouTube and you search for @PrepNet-Talk2Me, and you'll find our channel, and there will be 2 playlists there. and you can go in and you can see most of the stuff that we've done. And then sometimes I will put in comments, like if we've had a really good discussion and some real good, let me break here. Yeah, since I'm not timing this. If we have some really good discussions or I've sort of left something out that, I really should have said, I'll also post a comments on that particular topic. And just to let you know, when we first started this thing, I just came up at the top of my head probably about 51, and I know it's expanded, different net topics. Because you can't cover one particular thing in one night and just have the net go for less than an hour and like my little presentation of 5 to 7 minutes kind of thing. So we break it up into little bite-sized chunks and go from there. So hopefully that will help you and might get you an idea of how to try and get the community, because I do agree just one person or a family surviving a deal is definitely not the goal.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys, talking about it. I mean, that's the first step, is to get communication going and people sharing ideas and plans. But like I said, I'm more in favor of, bugging out seems extremely risky and may actually cause more harm in the long run. Unless you have maybe a cabin or something, a pre-planned location you're going to. But yeah, I've been a ham radio operator for 40 years. I've been a district emergency coordinator. I'm also a member of ITDRC, which is Information Technology Disaster Resource Center, as well as Ground Force Humanitarian Aid. So yeah, I'm kind of used to some of this, but I see communities over and over again that are just woefully unprepared as a community to respond to these sorts of things.
Right, absolutely. And that's, again, another reason for the net is we all have different perspectives. I mean, you bring in a really good one about not necessarily using the term prepping, but, community preparedness. Great idea. And you also have the experience of knowing that, you go in and see, okay, if that person would have just done one other thing, things might have been different. And I definitely agree with you, and this is, again, my thing, is I have no place to go. I'm already at my place. I mean, I literally moved here. I'm in the hills of Montana, or not the hills, the mountains. I look out my window at the Continental Divide, a 10,000-foot mountain, but I got no place to go. And the amount of stuff you need to take with you is unbelievable. The more I've gotten into this, the more I've come to realize that your bugging out is not a camping trip. You need to take stuff that you can not only survive but thrive, and that is a lot of stuff. So bugging in or having, like you said, a cabin or something that you can pre-stock stuff with is definitely the way to go. So I really appreciate you checking in here and giving us your insights, and I hope you continue to check in. And please check out the website, because it may give you some ideas, and it also may give you some things where you look at it and you go, that guy's nuts. Get back on here and tell us so.
Yeah, for sure. Hope to join more often. One thing to think about is when you're thinking about a plan, especially for your community, a small village, or maybe even just your subdivision, is thinking about people that are vulnerable, the elderly, people with disabilities. These are the people that are going to be hit the hardest and probably be forgotten quickly in a disaster. They're going to be maybe immobile. Maybe they don't have a vehicle. They rely on outside help. And so these are the kinds of people where you can do an inventory to say, hey, if we had a hurricane, I know that there are, 6 people in my neighborhood that are in wheelchairs, right? Or I know people, maybe there's, half a dozen people that are over the age of 80, right? Having this information and where they're at, and maybe even a way to contact them by a radio or other way, could really streamline getting help to them, especially when the VOADs start coming in and wanting to say, hey, where do you need us to help?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and this preparedness thing is a big rabbit hole. I mean, there are so many sides to it and so many things that each of us can do that can make things better if something happens, because we're not going to be able to do it. That is one of the reasons why I store so many things, and it's not just food. I mean, I store water, medical supplies, clothes, tools, et cetera, et cetera. So if somebody, as you were saying, elderly, disabled, et cetera, and we know who they are, that's the other part, we can help. And I absolutely agree with that. So, again, please check out the site and, see if we're going in the right direction, maybe with our twist is a little bit, quote, prepping, but hopefully there's a lot of that stuff that could be utilized in the home community, and bring that info back. So maybe we need to turn around and have a couple of sessions on exactly that topic to get people to think about it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if there's anything I can do to help or questions, maybe I can help or point you to somebody who can. Like I said, I belong to a number of these groups that do this stuff on a national basis. And so we go into communities after a disaster and specifically look for people that are vulnerable and try to get them singled out and get them help or get them moved to a shelter, and or we bring supplies to them, or maybe cut down trees with chainsaws that have blocked their driveway, or whatever it might be. But those are the kind of things that we probably all need to think about. I try not to only just think about prepping as a singular activity. So that's just my input for what it's worth. This is Terry from Florida.
Okay, now is that Terry or Terry?
Sorry, it's Terry, Terry.
I don't know why I hear K. Probably my old ears. It's better if we were doing CW. Anyway. No, absolutely. Let me throw out there and see, is there anybody who wants to do a late check-in that has been listening and wants to make a comment? Come with your name and state, please. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to check and see Donna or Keith, considering what we've been talking about, any comments, suggestions, or questions?
Yeah, well, I live in Louisiana, and I live right, I'm the furthest south in the area that I'm in. I'm about 20 miles north of the Gulf. All they have behind me is levee and marsh, and then the Gulf. And we're surrounded by levees, and if something ever happened where a levee would breach, I don't care how much preps I had stored in my house, it would all be nothing good anymore. So something like that, I'm not sure how to prepare for something like that. But anyhow, as we've seen with Katrina and that levee busted in New Orleans, what could happen in a situation like that. But the only bad thing I think about is, like, I live in a big neighborhood, big subdivision. A lot of people don't think about prepping and stuff like that. They're just planning on whenever it happens, the government's going to come down here and they're going to take care of it. And that's the mentality I see of a lot of people, man. And I'm not one of those, I don't want to go run to Walmart, right before a storm, fight people to get supplies, I just get a little bit extra every time I go and add on to my stock, But yeah, if everybody would plan at least for an incident like a storm, I think it would be a lot better for everyone. Yeah, I cut out. Anyway, I think it would be a whole lot better for everyone if everybody would prepare for stuff.
No, this is true. This is true. And hopefully we're inspiring a little bit and, even getting, communities to do it, by this, that, or the other thing. And, preparing for your situation. And like you said, preparing can be expensive, but you can, like you say, you just, get a couple extra cans of this, a couple extra boxes of that, where it doesn't hit you financially that bad, but you do start getting a little stock. And, you can't prepare for everything. And that's not what we're thinking of that. Oh, I'll do all this preparing and I'm good. I mean, if nuclear bomb goes off 5 miles from me, all my preps go up. I mean, not even in smoke; they just get disintegrated. But yeah. So anyway, that sounds good. We are getting close to the end there, and not a bad net for only 3 people checking in. So we don't have to have a big group, although we'd like to have a big group because we'd like to hear a lot of comments, questions, and things of that nature, and suggestions that we get. And let me break here real quick. And for those who want to turn around and you have a suggestion or a question, we have an email address. Big surprise. So if you just send a message to PrepNetCH14@gmail.com and put either suggestion or question in the subject line, and we'll take a look at it. And if we can answer the question, we will directly, and maybe we'll put it on here if it's important, which most likely it is. Or if you have a suggestion that, hey, maybe we should cover another topic, please do that. So with that, I'm going to, one last time, anybody have anything else they want to comment on before we return the channel to its normal use?
I just want to say thanks, Jim, for stepping up for Red Bear tonight. We appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, but I know he does a much better job. I mean, he's there are net controls, and then there are net controls, and he does a really good net control job. Anybody else have a comment before we go back to regular programming? Okay, nothing heard. I want to thank everybody, Don, Keith, and Terry, for jumping in there and giving us a good time for talking about this stuff. And as I said, we're going to start our electricity thing, and hopefully it'll be interesting. Some of it might be boring, but just stick with it. We'll get to the part that you really want to listen to. So with that, I'll go ahead and return the channel back to normal use, and hopefully we'll see everybody next week at 6 Eastern on Channel 14. Good evening.
All right, good evening, everyone. Great net.